North Korea's recent missile launches and audacious cyberattacks show that its provocations only get bolder. The regime's behavior is not just defiance, but proof that sanctions designed to strangle its funding are leaking badly. Despite successive UN Security Council resolutions meant to cut off nearly 90% of Pyongyang's export revenue, coal, textiles, seafood, and limit fuel imports, North Korea continues to fund its nuclear and missile programs. The culprit? A de facto secret deal with China and increasingly Russia that tolerates, enables, and even protects sanctions evasion in pursuit of regime stability and geostrategic advantage. At the heart of this scheme lies a shadow network of financial, maritime, and human conduits centered in China. DPRK agents rely heavily on Chinese-based front companies, shell firms registered in Hong Kong or border provinces that blur the path of goods and money. U.S. Treasury sanctions occasionally name such firms. For example, Shenyang Gumpungri Network Technology Company Limited, designated in August 2025 for facilitating DPRK IT worker schemes. These channels let North Korea mask deals in electronics, garments, or minerals as Chinese origin trade. Former data shows that China once accounted for 90 to 95% of North Korea's reported merchandise trade. Though official figures collapsed under sanctions, informal and illicit trade likely continues at significant scale via these Chinese conduits. U.S. enforcement efforts repeatedly target China-linked intermediaries, but the scale of trade flows and the sheer number of potential fronts make policing extremely difficult. Physical leakage compounds the problem. North Korea ships banned goods or receives fuel not through direct routes, but via ship-to-ship transfers in open seas. The UN's panel of experts has documented dozens of cases where DPRK-flagged tankers rendezvoused near Chinese waters and transferred refined petroleum, often in excess of the 500,000-barrel cap, with Chinese authorities reluctant to intervene. In July 2025, reports emerged of blacklisted North Korean tankers operating off the Chinese coast near Zhoushan and Taizhou, suggesting local tolerance or non-enforcement despite sanctions. On land, border crossings, especially in Jilin province, see variable enforcement. Some crossings are inspected rigorously. Others remain wide open, allowing banned goods and raw materials to slip across. Another pillar of funding: overseas labor and cyber operations. Thousands of North Korean IT workers are deployed, largely in China, Russia, and other nations, under the guise of programming or technical services. Their wages, often funneled back to the regime, are estimated in the hundreds of millions annually. Meanwhile, North Korean hacking groups have targeted cryptocurrency firms, conducted ransomware attacks, and stolen digital assets worth billions. The UN panel reports investigating more than 58 cyber attacks tied to DPRK actors in 2024, valued at an estimated $3 billion, partially financing missile and weapons programs. As John K. Hurley, Undersecretary of the Treasury 2025, puts it, the North Korean regime continues to target American businesses through fraud schemes involving its overseas IT workers, who steal data and demand ransom. The scale of China's involvement becomes more evident at the diplomatic level. China and Russia have shifted their position at the UN. States that once supported sanctions now routinely veto or abstain from key resolutions. In March 2024, Russia vetoed and China abstained on renewing the UN Panel of Experts mandate, the body that audits sanctions compliance and tracks violations, effectively dismantling the chief independent watchdog. This move signals political cover rather than passive neglect. China's oft-repeated foreign policy mantra, no war, no instability, no nuclear weapons, aligns with its tolerance for North Korea's sanctions evasion. The political calculus is explicit. Preserving Pyongyang as a buffer state and strategic partner matters more than full sanctions enforcement. Despite international pressure, DPRK's WMD and ballistic missile development remain rapidly advanced. Yongbion's uranium enrichment facilities are reported operational, and imported precision CNC machines, purportedly from China, are visible in new DPRK munitions factories, violating UNSC resolutions. Intelligence sources also suggest China has tacitly allowed or ignored these technology imports. The regime's access to foreign materials and technological know-how remains crucial to advancing its weapons programs. Compounding complexity is the emerging Russia-DPRK-China arms nexus. Satellite imagery and intelligence reports suggest North Korea has exported missiles or parts to Russia, for example, fragments of Hwasong rockets discovered in conflict zones. China has neither openly condemned nor intervened. Beijing appears to maintain neutrality publicly, but allows its neighbor to act as a strategic partner behind closed doors. The erosion of the sanctions regime is not just a diplomatic failure, it amplifies global risk. With nuclear and missile programs flourishing, tensions rise across East Asia and beyond. The deal between China and North Korea shows how strategic imperatives can undercut international rules. If the world cannot prevent a regime from skirting sanctions with the help of its neighbors, then deterrence and diplomacy lose credibility. Policy options are limited, yet urgent. With the UN's monitoring mechanism neutralized, the US, South Korea, and Japan may need to rely on secondary sanctions targeting Chinese banks and intermediaries. Enhanced intelligence cooperation, maritime interdiction, and tighter financial monitoring will be crucial. But such moves run the risk of escalation. Beijing may resist aggressively being pressured to collapse its informal buffer. The bigger question: can the international community rebuild a sanctions regime capable of withstanding state complicity? China's posture reflects a broader truth. In matters of high politics, enforcement is often subordinate to geopolitics. As Joshua Stanton aptly framed it, China violates North Korea's sanctions it voted for and says won't work because it's afraid they'll work, and also says it isn't violating them. That contradiction is the core of the sanctions failure. When a regime is backed by its powerful neighbor, sanctions become symbolic, and the weapons development they aimed to prevent accelerates.